My name is Kimberly Allen, and thank you for coming out to the Organization of Black Screenwriters panel. I work here in the Savant Center in the Human Resources Department. I've been a part of the Motion Picture and Television Fund for over 18 years, working here in the HR department, helping to hire caregivers and different staff members that serve here at Motion Picture. But in addition to that, I'm a screenwriter. And I moved here from Detroit, Michigan to pursue knowledge of how screenwriting works, what it does, and I discovered this group of people called Organization of Black Screenwriters. Now, I've been a member since 1999. So I have with me 6 writers that I have known for 40 plus years. They are part of the Organization of Black Screenwriters, and I'm going to kind of go down the list and say their names and give you a little tidbit about them, but then they're going to speak and tell you much more. I have a few questions for them, and then I'll open it up to the audience for you all to ask whatever questions you want to ask. All right, so first and foremost, I want to say, sometimes people ask me about the Organization of Black Screenwriters, which has been around since 1988. That predates when I came here. However, this organization has been very meaningful in many people's lives. And sometimes people ask me the question, why is there a need for an organization of Black screenwriters instead of just screenwriters? And the reason is representation matters. And so statistics show that early, I would say, in the 80s when OBS was first formed, all the way through when I came along, less than 7% of the TV writers and screenwriters were Black people in this industry. And now we are about at 16% of the writers in this industry. And so what that means is that more stories are being told that represents our culture, our background, not just here in America, but worldwide. The diaspora of Black people throughout the world need their stories to be told. And so what I found when I came here was that writing was it's kind of a very lonely work, because you're alone with your thoughts and you're writing. But when you come amongst other writers and you get to share your work and you get to see their journey and you share information, it's very powerful. And so that's what I got out of the Organization of Black Screenwriters. So first I want to introduce Willie Davis. If you see in your chair, there is a stapled list of bios. So there's a lot more information in the bios, but I'm just going to give you those snippets. So Willie has an impressive background serving honorably in the U.S. Air Force, and he was a top engineer at Raytheon. He also worked with some heavy hitters in Hollywood and is an award-winning screenwriter/producer. Jennifer Williams. Jennifer Williams is a screenwriter and novelist who penned the original story of Coach Carter, the Ken Carter story, and former president of the Organization of Black Screenwriters, and currently coordinates the writers group within OBS. So Doreen Hamilton came to Hollywood by way of New York through the world of stand-up comedy, improv, and sketch. Doreen has worked off-Broadway, embracing her Jamaican roots and her New York upbringing. And also, she's a multi-hyphenate writer, actor, and for many, a mentor. She's been my mentor for many people. And she also has served as one of the first presidents of the Organization of Black Screenwriters. And Doreen was chosen to also head up the Guy Hanks and Marva Miller screenwriting program, sponsored by Drs. Bill and Camille Cosby as executive director, which she held that position for 14 years. And she has been able to discover many talents such as Lena Waite and Kemp Powers. Monique Mitchell Sims. She and I attended the same high school, but just at different times. I'm much older. I'm not going to say my age. But we're both from Detroit. We both went to Golightly Vocational Technical School, where we were in the math major program, and we still have one of our teachers that's our mentor today. And she followed in my footsteps again at Wayne State University, where we both got our bachelor's degree in journalism. So Monique is she also has her MFA from Columbia College in Chicago, and she's currently pursuing her PhD in sociology. She's an award-winning WGA screenwriter, playwright, author, journalist. She's executive producer, showrunner for her podcast series. It's called Pocky Series. And she's a staff writer on BET's All Queens Men. So Zaylee Dimber-Slack. So Zaylee is a multi-hyphenate screenwriter, director, filmmaker, actress, and we worked on many projects together. We've written projects together, produced projects together. Zaylee also has her MFA in film from Chapman University, and she was recently accepted into the Universal Pictures Producing Accounting Apprenticeship Program. Quinn Jones is a screenwriter performer. She's used her creativity from everything from writing short stories, TV, comedy, scripts, and live performances, both acting and singing. Quinn was accepted into the Guy Hanks and Marvin Miller Screenwriting Fellowship, sponsored by Dr. Phil and Camille Cosby. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off by asking each person, starting with Willie Davis, to just basically talk about how they discovered organizations like Screenwriters and how it has impacted their life.
Hi, Willie Davis here. Many years ago, like Kimberly was saying, there was a lot of avenues for Black screenwriters. So it was like, trying to find something or someone or an organization to be with to help you through, this wasteland of no writing for Black writers. So I found OBS. I joined it years and years ago, and it turned out to be a blessing because OBS, way back when, used to put out job opportunities through email. I forget how I got it, and they put out this one particular little blip about PA needing. Okay, so I answered I sent an email to the person looking for a PA, and about 4 or 5 months later, I get the mail back saying that, hey, would you like to work? And I said yes, and so they ended up hiring me. I went down to Santa Monica, found out it was James Cameron's Lightstorm Entertainment. So I ended up working for James Cameron for 2.5 years on his show Dark Angel, where I became from a PA to a writer's assistant. And because of that, I was able to get into the Fox Diversity Program, which got me a job working on Wanda Sykes' show, Wanda at Large. And so the OBS has been, a gold mine for me. And I've known these ladies for years and years and years, and found it to be one of the best things that I've ever done.
Hello, everyone. I found OBS after Coach Carter, learning a lot of things that I did not know because I came from corporate America, still working and doing things and trying to work my way up that ladder when someone found me Coach Carter actually asked me to write his memoir. And from there, we went to a film. I have no clue what this world is like. I learned quickly, the wrong way, and somebody else, Roger Mosley, God rest his soul, told me, you need to look for organizational Black screenwriters. You need to get with them and they can tell you all the things you need to know. And that's what I did. I found them in early 2000s and I've been with them ever since.
Well, I've been with OBS longer than everybody on this panel. But when I started, it was in the very beginning stages of OBS. I found out about it. I was in a writing class at Beverly Hills Adult School. And this other brother that was in the class said, I hear there's a group of Black writing meeting in Pasadena. I thought, we should go. We only two Black people in that. And at that time, it was really like a group of like 5 angry writers. And myself, Kevin Ross, you might know from television, Judge Ross, the boss. He was, this younger group of us came in and we were like, we got to change this. When they brought in a blind literary agent and he talked about knowing Stevie Wonder, I'm like, we got to do something. Yeah. And we ended up, getting an office. Like, Kevin, you be president. I'll do this. I'll do speakers. Janie will do that. And we, moved us from Pasadena, where nobody lived, to Los Angeles, and just really started bringing in speakers, people who can actually transform the organization and help writers get work, and just connect us to the industry. We had a writing competition. We had our first award show. It was not really an award show, but we were giving honors to different writers. But that had not been done. Hollywood had not done that. And I said, if we don't do it, it's not ever going to be done. So we just took a lot of the writers who had been doing stuff in this business, from Richard Wesley, who had been writing since he left Howard University in 1968, to Spike, to everybody. And just to say, we see you, we read you. So, and then I had to leave. And other people took forward and kept moving the organization forward. But it's been about connecting people in the organization. And for me, it was about, how can we open a door? And that's what kept me there. I said, how can we open a door for someone else to get through? Give them the mentorship, give them the education, give them what they needed to be viable. And that's when I went over to the Guy Hanks program, but that's what Dr. Cosby wanted, for people for writers of color to be able to compete with non-writers of color. And so that became a whole journey for me. But, oh yes.
I am a proud alum of OBS and the Guy Hanks program. So that was a connection. But I moved here in 1997 and didn't know so. I was living in an apartment with 5 actors. Yeah. As a writer, it was a lot. And one of my roommates was like, you know what? You should find your people. And I was like, where are these people that you speak of? And I heard about OBS. I'm like, okay. And I went there and I met everyone. And it was really great for me, coming from journalism and then coming from Chicago with my MFA and learning that even though I had an MFA, I still had to be a production assistant. It was great that I met people who understood that and could give me a path forward. And also make me feel, wanted and cared for, because this was a very cold place when I arrived. And and I also happened to win the Showtime by Filmmakers Grant Award program at the same time and did not know a soul. And Doreen was one of the first people who was like, listen, let me connect you with some folks because you have the opportunity, but you don't know what you're doing. So that was a great way for me to meet other people like me who had been here before, had done it before. And OBS was really just a safety net for me because I was completely lost when I got here.
OBS started for me when I was an actress in New York. And I wanted to expand, have more success than I did in New York. I did a national Burger King commercial, and I did a lot of extra work on a lot of shows and feature films. But I wanted more. I wanted to be able to speak on camera. And so I moved out to Los Angeles. And I ran into the hardest of all. So I understand feeling lost. But I kept on. I found my tribe in the Organization of Black Screenwriters, and it's been amazing because I got a chance to do also the Guy Hanks and Martin Miller screenwriting program. And then it just ballooned from there. There was a lot of different competitions, and we all worked together to help each other to, you know, succeed. So that was my favorite.
Good afternoon. Okay, so just imagine someone who knows nothing about screenwriting. I mean, below green, just nothing. So I took my very first screenwriting class at El Camino College, and a student, and this was 97, a student there told me about OBS. And so, you know, I went and then I left and then I came back. But it's been, oh my gosh, everything. A very safe place and just direct connection to major players in the industry that I would not have had at all had I not joined OBS. And I just want to add a little something. You do not have to be African American. We welcome all colors, but as I said earlier, the representation was just so not level. And I have a little history on that too, because I remember I was at Cal State Division Skills and I got my little BA in communications. And I believe it was the early 2000s that the NAACP started hitting these networks up, like, you know, you have to balance this out. Because there have been many Black shows, but guess how many people of color were writing on these shows? And they're telling Black stories, but it's still not enough of us. And so it was because NAACP started hitting the networks up, they developed these diversity programs. ABC is Disney. There was one on the WB. There's Fox. There's CBS. I mean, all these different Nickelodeon, if they're still around. I'm not sure if they're still around. But yeah, and so I just got so much exposure, a safe place to grow, and we're all like different levels. So it didn't matter if you didn't know anything or if you had been writing forever and ever, everyone is welcome. And so that's why we'll forever love OBS.
What's the membership?
So the membership was around 300. It was all LA based before. It's different now because it's online and people can join from all over the world. It's not set up, it's structured differently now with technology. So people can join, and it's not a dollar amount membership. It's basically a participation membership. You know, how you show up, and you know, writing, giving coverage, receiving coverage, things of that nature. So that's the way it works, and they take people in certain times of the year. But the way that it used to be, we would meet at the Golden State Mutual Building on Adams and Western.
Yeah.
And that was like our safe haven for years.
Yeah.
And we would go there, and it used to be like every 2 weeks, and then it became like once a month. But I was living in Orange County when I joined, so I was like 105 freeway, like every Saturday. And there was a lot of different speakers that would come, TV speakers. We've had all kinds of heavy hits. I remember one time we had Carrie Fisher came to school, and everybody was there. It was just like we had Mara Bucket Keel, Saladin Patterson, Bill Duke,
Robert Townsend.
Yeah, Robert Townsend. We just had so many different speakers to come, and it was a
Norman
membership
Lear.
that you would pay. I didn't hear you.
Norman Lear.
Yeah.
Norman Lear, yes. Mark Lays and Cree. Just different people would come and just pour into us and tell us about opportunities, and we would, I don't know, I'm sure everybody here has done this, but it's a thing in the writer's world where you're trying to break in, and they have these diversity programs or screenwriting fellowships and programs, and every year you're like trying to get in and you're sending these scripts out. And it's such a competitive nature, with this business. And I had like a stack of rejection letters like this thick. I would just it was like clockwork, just put it in the folder. But one year they called me from Disney, and out of 4,000 scripts, I wrote Everybody Loves Raymond Speck, and out of 4,000, I was one of 30 people they ended up interviewing. But I still didn't get in, which was heartbreaking at the time. But at least it meant that I was doing something right and I was getting closer or better. Yeah. I want to direct a question to Doreen about storytelling. Why is storytelling important for everyone?
And I wrote a speech, but I'm not gonna read it. No, I didn't. Like when you start thinking, that's writing.
Yeah.
You know, everyone has a story. And every story that comes through you is not necessarily a screenplay or a television show sometimes it's just an essay, you know, or one line that transformed a certain time in your life. But I feel storytelling is important because it connects us. It lets you know that you're human. And it helps transform not just your life, but other people's lives. It can heal another person's life. You can inspire through your writing. And just sometimes people don't hear you when you tell them something, but they may see it, you know, on a show or what have you, or read it because you've written it down. I always remember, for everyone here, I know there's like a movie or a show that you may have seen that there was a line or the story itself transformed your life. I remember when I was a kid. Now I don't watch a lot of soap operas now because I'm not in them. But I always remember Erica Kane on all my children. She once said, when I was a kid, she once said, you know, if a man can't be there when you need him, you don't need him. I was like, you know, I still remember that to this day. They're like, now I know what it means. I didn't really know what it means then because the only man I knew was my father. And he was always, you did what you need to do. But we write things that transform people's lives. Sometimes we scare them straight. You know, if you're into horror, you're like, don't open the door. You know, but it's really knowing and recognizing that these stories that we have should not, as they say, don't let your music die in you. Don't let your story die. Allow yourself to write. I mean, everyone here can form a writer's group and just say, hey, everybody, let's write one story about the best time in our life, or something that happened when we were 16, or just, you know, whatever you want it to be. And you'll find that from everyone's story, you learn something, you grow something. Everyone here that's written a script has written something that has changed someone's life. You know, writing Coach Carter, that's impressive. Someone had to start somewhere. You know, his story needed to be told. You know, so we're telling that story. And so I think that's why storytelling is important, because again, it just brings us together as a culture, not even a culture, but it has what's the word? Community, as a world. You know, even stories that you cannot see, you have to read some subtitles. It's a story. You know, you see things that you would never want to have happen to you, and other stories, I want that to happen for me. So it's important to allow yourself to, I want to say play with that. You know, flow with that in your life, in your world. Because it's important. We need your story. No matter how old or young you are, we need your story.
Thank you.
Question for Willie Davis. What lessons have you learned in the process of becoming a writer? And is there anything you would do differently?
Well, like Doreen was saying, it's all about story. So I learned that the story comes first, then the characters. You know, if you have a great story, something that most people haven't seen or thought about or whatever, you can frame it and then put some good characters in it to tell that story, then you have a hit. You know, you can have some really great actors be in a story, but if the story is not really good, it doesn't matter. It'll flop, you know. But the other way around, if you have a really good story, you know, you usually get, you can get it done. The things that I've learned over the years, especially when I was working at Lightstone with James Cameron, I started out as a PA, and now I'm coming from a world of engineering. I was a quality engineer at Raytheon, 20 some odd years there. You know, I was top of the heap, signing $1 million contracts and that whole thing. And I went from there down to just doing scripts. Back in the day, before internet, you had to take the scripts to the producers. And so I found myself 1 and 2 o'clock in the morning going to various places, dropping off scripts. Matter of fact, I ran into Quinn. I ran into Quinn at Fox one time. I don't know if you remember that. Yeah, I was taking scripts there.
Yeah.
And so I'm going from signing $1 million contracts down to delivering coffee and bagels and the whole thing. And I worked my way up to writer's assistant. And during all that time, I put people on pedestals, which when I look back, that was the wrong thing to do because I'm already coming from a high position, but I mentally lowered myself, and another gentleman, Craig Sweeney, who I love, he was going off for bagels, same way as I was. He was the showrunner's assistant, okay? Now, Craig did the right thing. He would ask people, could you read my script? Could you give me some advice? The whole thing. I didn't have that confidence to do that. Okay. So now Craig is running his own shows on CBS and every place else. And I'm still, trying to get to that point. So the lesson that I learned is that everybody's at the same level, regardless, and so it's not like, just because someone's a showrunner and you're the PA, that you put yourself in that position. No, you have some value also to give. And hopefully one day you'll be the showrunner. So those lessons that I've learned, I'm passing on to all the young people coming into the business, that when they go in, think of themselves highly. Don't lower your mentality to say, well, because I deliver scripts, this is my position. No, you can write a great show too. You just need the opportunity to do so. So that's what I can work with.
I'm gonna put this out there for whoever wants to answer this. What does success look like for you in business?
For me, I used to have a idea of success where I was comparing myself to everyone else. And the older I've gotten, I realized that even things I consider mistakes, that was part of my journey. That made me who I am. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. I no longer compare myself to others. And it took a lot of years for me to get to that point. I'm a co-caregiver for my mom who has dementia. So the fact that I'm unemployed right now,
Underemployed.
well, underemployed, gives me the freedom to be there for her. And so now success for me means I have the freedom to make my own choices about where I want to be, how I want to spend my time. As long as I have my laptop, I'm writing. It doesn't matter where I am. And I'm a lot more conscious about the choices that I make. Opportunities have come my way, but because I now have my mom as my priority, that frames my decisions. And I'm like, well, does it fit into this? My life is this way now. Does this fit? If it doesn't fit, that's not for me. I can say no to it. I don't feel bad. In the past, I would feel like I have to say yes to everything because who knows when the next opportunity is going to come. And when you operate from that place of scarcity, then it just makes you anxious and angry. Those angry writers you talk about all the time. But now, when I say no, the thing that's for me shows up miraculously and it fits into my life. So for me, success is freedom.
Oh, yeah.
I really want to preface, that family, you got to put family first. And I remember when I was an at-home mom and I was sitting on the couch folding laundry and I was watching Oprah. And I had to step away from the business because I couldn't do those demanding 12-hour days. And so the only thing I could do was write. So I'm sitting there folding laundry. Oprah comes on. She's like, you gotta watch this show because it's about moms rekindling their dreams. You know, so I was like, oh, this is for me. Let me hear this. And so when I started listening, she said, it's time for you to put down your laundry and pick up your dreams. I looked at the TV and I was like, you don't understand. I have 5 of the 6 children that we had. And I was like, there is no way. And she looked into the television again, did a close-up, and she said, I said, put down your laundry and pick up your dreams. So I was like, okay, I have got to do that. So I dusted up an old screenplay in between changing diapers and cooking dinner and doing my thing. And I submitted to the Guy Hanks and Muffin Miller screenwriting program. And I also submitted to the Hollywood Black Film Festival storytelling competition. And I placed in that competition as second, and I got into the Cosby program. And so it was such a blessing. I put the family first. I had to. That was my journey. And so since then, I got my husband on board, and we started making short films, and then we started making features and helping other people do their stuff. So it works out. So you just do you.
I want to say when she came in for an interview, when she left, I told Larry Albert, who I worked with, I said, she got 5 kids. If we don't get her in this program, she won't be able to do anything. She got kids.
No.
Everything, baby, you gotta give this woman a chance here. And he was like, oh, good. I'm like,
Thank you very much.
I want to chime in on that whole thing with the kids and the writing. So she and I wrote a script together, and what I would do is, this when I was down in Orange County, I was working down in Orange County, and it wasn't far from her house, and so I would drive over her house in the evening for us to write, and she would have notes for me. But while she's giving me notes, she has one in the other room doing homework. She's cooking. She has a newborn. I don't want to be TMI, but she's breastfeeding. And she's giving me notes all at the same time. And I'm like, I think we need to be right about what you're doing. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah, there's a lot.
She is woman.
Yeah.
That's why I call her Zany Wood.
I want to ask Monique this question. How does technology play a role in your storytelling?
Technology. What was that Will Smith movie where he didn't like technology? Who was that? And the robot. Okay, yeah. I am a little iRobot. I will say that by saying. So for me, technology in my storytelling. Okay, an administrative level, it helps a lot with the note taking and all that type of stuff. As a storyteller, I tend not to focus on technology very much. I like to go old school. I like to just deal with stuff that is tangible and touchable and real, because I feel like it will last longer. The one thing about, as a writer, I've learned, if you put technology in your screenplay, this is just a little tip, it's going to change. Technology is going to change. You're always going to be constantly updating your script. Cell phones aren't going to look the same. Computers are not going to look the same. I'm still waiting for the Jetsons to become a real thing with flying cars. So you have to be careful, at least I've learned, to be careful with how much technology I put into my screenplay, not to make it an important part of the story, because who knows when the script is going to get produced. Who knows when things are going to change. So I try to stay a little more traditional for me. And that's just my own take on technology.
Well, what about technology as far as a tool?
we were talking about outside.
Yeah, I mean, I love technology as far as a tool, as far as like, I'm not as deep into the conversation they were having. It was really deep. I'm not that deep yet. But I do appreciate using technology to make my job easier, so I can focus more on creative stuff. Anything administrative wise, I'm like, okay, let me figure out how to use this tool to a certain point. as a member of the guild, that was one of our sticking points, not to let technology write for us. So I'm very, very clear on like, okay, I'm not gonna go this far. I'm not gonna let you do all the creative work, but anything to free up my day so I can be creative in my pajamas and make up stuff, then that's why I use technology.
I think Willie is one of the channels.
And this has everything to do about Kimberly. Back in the day, she is an integral part of my life, especially screenwriting. I would have Kimberly go over my script. She went over my Western script, gave me notes, for grammar and things that I missed and so on and so forth. I mean, over and over again. And I would pay her like $1 a page or $2 a page or whatever it was. And I'd give her $100 or whatever. And that was my go-to girl. I mean, lady. I mean, as soon as I finish it, here, Kimberly, do you have time? And she'll go ahead and read it. And I left apostrophes off. I have done 3 different places. The whole thing. Now I use Grammarly. Okay? And she has been replaced big time. So as a tool, like she was saying, like Monique was saying, it's great. I mean, talk about saving time and not being embarrassed because you don't have your commas in the right place. And, if you don't have the comma in the right place, that whole sentence could be different depending on who reads it, right? And so using that as a tool has been great for me. Using it creatively, now that's a scary thing, especially if you're doing research. I had lunch with a showrunner friend of mine from the Dark Angel days, and I asked him about that. And he's more Bible-based storytelling now, okay? And he said, you gotta be careful when you're talking to Claude and all these chat GPTs and whatnot. So he asked a question to him and he says, is such and such the granddaughter of this person, okay? And the AI said, no. And he says, but it was, right? And he says, that young lady is the daughter of the son of this particular person, which makes it the granddaughter. So ChatGPT and all the other ones can take you in a circle if you don't watch it, if you're doing your research. So you can end up putting the wrong information in there. So that's why you have to really be careful about using it. Otherwise, it can give you some great ideas, but if you're in the research part, you can lead you down a rabbit hole, and you have to be very careful about that.
I'd like to add something on that. Technology, it's coming fast, and if you do not somehow embrace it, you get left behind. So I always tell people the creative stuff, I'm all for it. Just doing our writers groups, and you rewrite with writers groups and the writers group, and then when you're done, upload and see the kind of feedback that you're gonna get. And OBS now has a tool that we can, there's a couple out there, but OBS now has a tool that's safe to use, that it's not training the AI, but it has a library that it can pull from. And so it's really interesting, some of the feedback that you get. That the studio's gonna have maybe possibly do something like that. And so you wanna be prepared, you don't wanna be blindsided. But I'm all about the writers group, sticking to your creativeness that comes from within you, your spirit, because everybody does have an important story to tell. And if we use that AI in a way where everybody's story turns out to be the same, that's not, you want to be able to give your wisdom, pass it on in your stories, encourage people. And where does that come from? That comes from inside you. And so there's tools for the AI. Yes, I embrace the whole Grammarly thing, but it's, when it comes time to the storytelling, I think that's for the individual writer to tell their story. So.
But there are also tools you can use in case you don't have the time. You can dictate You can dictate your stories and get in there. You can do that in Word, and use dictate. People say, "Oh, I'm writing so much time." You can talk. You can speak your story. So there are ways to make sure that your story is there, and then you go into all the straightening it out. The programs are having real writers or people look at it and say, "Okay, this character is saying this," but you can. It's easier now to tell your story. You just have to have a desire to tell a story.
I want to open it up to, you have,
Can I just go back a little bit when you were talking about what is success to you? I wanted to add something.
oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay, sorry about that, because the train went that way. Anyway, I just want to say that success for me, because there's been so many transitions in my life, and I think probably anyone could apply this, is not giving up. And it's never too late. Don't buy that lie, because your brain will be telling you, look at this, look at this, look at that. And, again, through OBS and watching creators like Zaylee and Kim, when Kim you were working on something, and I remember this is a testimony, you were like, but I don't have the money, and I don't have, just the basics. And Zaylee was like, just do it. Just do it. And it's going to come. So there is a lot of rejection, I will say that. Cannot take it personally. I used to take it so personally, and I remember when Kim actually there were 2 times, I think, for Disney, because Disney and Kazi at the same time, right? Didn't that happen?
Not at the same time.
Not at
She
the
just
same
blanked
time?
that out of her mind.
Okay, okay. So, I applied to the Cosby program, which is the Martin Miller Guy Hanks, 3 times. And the 3rd time was a charm. And it was, so don't give up. And there's so many different ways you can create now. Now, me personally, I don't care for AI. I don't trust it. I'd rather do everything strictly with people. That's just me. Because I trust, because I'm always thinking, I don't want to get stolen. I don't want to be, take my voice. I want my voice or someone's original voice to always be first and foremost. But yeah, so success to me is not giving up. Just keep at it. Keep at it. And, forget about the rejections, because they're going to come. Just keep at it.
It would have been nice if somebody told me about the rejection part in the beginning. Because it was, rejection after rejection after rejection.
But every note lets you know you're in the game. Yeah. You're in the game. Because they have someone who had to read it to say, no.
Yeah.
As opposed to, I'm too scared, or I'm not going to do that, I'm not good enough. Every note brings you closer to the yes.
And when you get that yes, it's so beautiful. I'm just saying, it's beautiful.
It is. Absolutely.
I want to ask if the audience, does anybody in the audience have any questions?
Sure.
I noticed a lot of you said that you came on around late 90s, early 2000s, and at the time there was you had 5 studios and 3 big networks, a couple smaller networks, and now of course it's a jillion streaming platforms.
Right.
Do you find it easier to get your story told, or is it harder, or is it just different? How would you qualify it?
It depends on, there are more choices now. Because there are more ways to create your own story, and now even with the horizontal verticals that they're having right now, people have been shooting their own stuff. There's, you can still do what used to be like webisodes, which is what a vertical is. You have opportunities through Tubi, through All Black, through everything that's streaming, Fox Soul, to get your stories out there. You have all the streamings as well than we had before. I mean, there's still that, you're not waiting necessarily for someone to let you into the room now. Now you can do your own thing. But depending if you want this to be told, this is a Netflix story, it must be here, sometimes that's so tricky if you don't have the right gatekeeper opening the gate for you. But there are more ways to get to that gate. I had a friend said, we're gonna just base all of this in Nigeria, since they're buying projects in Nigeria to put on Netflix. They don't have to know that we did it here. I'm like, so what did you? So there's more avenues to get your stuff out there, but there's always still a fence, harder to jump over.
Do screenwriters have agents?
Yes, you have agents, you have managers, you have lawyers. Yeah. No, but a lawyer can also get you. There are certain companies, studios. A lawyer can get you a meeting, can get your stuff read. So they have that power if you're with the right legal team. Because I remember that, a friend of mine was working at Warner Brothers Television, and they had a list on the wall. It was Karen Dean. They had a list on the wall of who they would take meetings from, who they would take calls from. Period. These agents, these managers, these lawyers. And if it wasn't one of those people, nobody took your call. But there's always a way. There's always a way. If I gotta meet you at the dry cleaners, whatever it is, what church you go to, whatever you gonna go there. There's always a way.
Offer to fold their case closed.
Yes, there's a way.
There was a question.
I would say that, like, even with all the different avenues and technology and all that wonderful stuff and all the fellowships and there's opportunities everywhere, resilient everywhere. And as a writer, you can get exhausted trying to chase every opportunity. You have to come up with a spreadsheet or something and decide. And those application fees are no joke either. So you have to come up with a decision okay, this is where I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go this way. And I would say for me personally, I'm a filmmaker and a screenwriter, and TV has always been, it was always the way in for a lot of my friends. They were TV writers, and I was never able to crack that nut until I got on All the Queen's Men. And then I'm like, okay, how do I get another TV job? This is good money, right? But I had to learn how to pick and choose, right? And realize that even with all these opportunities, even with all these applications, it's still a people business. It's still who you know and who knows you.
Yeah.
So you still gotta meet people in organic ways because it doesn't matter. I'm sure Guy Hanks is because of your name. I'm positive. She saw my name, saw the script, okay, yeah, Monique, and it puts you in another pile. There's always piles, and you want to get into the pile that's being read, the pile that's being considered. And you can only do that with people. So it doesn't matter how much technology we have, how much AI we have, how many, if you don't get out and meet some folks and figure out how to, like you said, at the grocery store or something like that, if you don't have a connection I have so many projects right now that you can't just send stuff flying submissions to people. They won't accept it. You still got to know who's the assistant over there. How do I get to that person? And then maybe I can get read that way. It hasn't changed. It's just a lot more opportunities now that you really have to work hard so you don't drive yourself crazy trying to chase everything like a cat trying to see red dot. You got to decide what you're going to do.
And everything else. You can shoot it yourself. But then, you're going to have to think we were at work, favorite nation, everybody's getting the same thing, a sandwich and a soda. But there's certain things you got to pay for. You need to make sure your camera person is right, your lighting person is right, and your sound person is right. Actors, we work for free a lot of times and wait for some money to come from somewhere. But there are key things that you need to do so that when you're going to try to sell it to Netflix or whoever, it looks good. We've all seen stuff that looks like, they just shoot this in the basement. Right. But when I look at a film like Paranormal Activity, the very first one, I said, they shot this, and so it looks grainy. They didn't, they put 50 grand into this movie and they make lots of money and tons of them. But it's about your story. What's your story? What's your way of getting, how can I tell this story where it looks good? Where it sounds good and it's something that's compelling to make you want to sit there. I know we've all seen stuff and it's like, I'll never get that time back. There's 2 hours that I will never get back. That's why I look at things now, I'm like, I need my life. But it's all about, it all comes down to the story. A good story told well, whether it's still in the script form or you try to shoot a sizzle reel or any kind of pilot for it, can get made. We're always looking for the yes. I think in life we all want a yes. Everyone here deserves a yes. But it still comes down to what do you have? And what else do you have? And that's always the second question.
In addition to that, the writing part, you've got to know the money. A lot of times people don't tell you what it takes to pull off a film or a television pilot. It's a lot of money. So, and you have to know how to allocate that money when it's given to you. Yes, you have a team, but you got to make sure that you have the right team because fraud is something, and I started out learning, the California Film Commission has a program, it's a 6-week program, and it introduces you to what a clerk does in the production accounting department. And that opened up another door for me, because then I was able to go to, I applied to the Universal Pictures Production Accounting Apprenticeship Program. And there, we learned so much. It was a 6-month paid program, and it was incredible because I got to see the behind the scenes of where every dollar went. You know, how they stopped the fraud. There was always something in place, and the background checks, and it's all on who you know. It's incredible, you know, how they do things. And for me, if you don't know how to pitch your project, if you don't know how to set up a pitch deck, you have to learn these things. The one sheet, what it means. You got to be able to pitch your, maybe in an elevator, you're talking to somebody and all of a sudden you see who they are. Well, where's that 2 minutes of blah, 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 blah? That's my story, you know? And you have to be ready to say, yes, I'm ready. I have the script, it's won the competition, and or it's got coverage that's really good. And you have to be ready. So that, because sometimes the opportunities come, and if you're not ready, you blow the chance to get in that door again. So you gotta be ready all the way around.
I wanna, we have about 5 minutes left, and I want to know if anybody else had a question.
I've got a question.
Yes.
So you guys keep mentioning, finding strong stories to tell and, stories having soul because we're writing versus, like AI or something created off in space. What do you guys use as indicators to find out whether or not you're like going in the right direction to tell a good story?
Each other.
Yeah.
OBS is amazing for that because it's whatever you're writing, there's a genre for it, and so if you want to write horror, there's templates up there that you could know that your structure is right. There's an avenue for you to go. If you want to do the Hallmark movie, there's an avenue. And one of the features that they have at OBS, it gives you prompts along the way when you're writing. So it'll ask you 20 questions, and you put in all the information of what you want to write and what you want to do as far as your personal brand, and it puts out a statement that you can use to tell everybody what your brand is, and it makes you so proud because you're doing something that's going to make a difference. And it tells you, okay, in 2 weeks, there's this competition coming up. The Austin Film Festival is coming up. It sent me a zinger yesterday. Are you ready? And this is what you need to do to get ready. You need to meet this page count. And so it's incredible what all the things, the tools that you have at OBS at your disposal. I mean, at your disposal. There you go, disposal.
But even around OBS, it's about having an outline for your story.
Yes.
Because it's a 3-act structure for a regular feature, or 4 acts if you're doing television now. But it's about the outline. Your outline tells you what's happening in your first act, what should happen in your second act, what happens at the end of your second act, that plunges you into your third act, and how to get that ending. It's all about the outline for your story. That's how you'll know if your story is like all this and no character, is no understanding characters and what character development is. So you know how she started at the beginning of the story is not how she is at the end of the story. So there needs to be like character arcs to let you know how this character is growing. And you see that in film, especially. In television shows, sometimes you'll see different seasons. Where, now they're focusing on his past this season. That's interesting. You see that differently in television than in a film. So it's really about the outline. That's how you know you have a story. What is it? Because it starts out,
No, it'd be really great if we went to, summer camp and then there's a monster chasing us, it's getting everybody.
what did you do last summer? I know what you did last summer. So it's like what happened to each person during this summer? So you look at it that way, how are these characters growing? Am I interested in, when people used to read your script, especially television scripts, by the end of the first page, there has to be a reason for me to want to turn the page. When you watch movies, and we studied movies, when I was working on Masters too, you study movies, it's like, okay, it used to be a thing where you should be in the first 10 minutes or the first 10 pages of your script. Where you should be at page 30, which is the end of your first act. Where you should be at page 60, which is where your second act is. And on page 66 or whatever, the part of the movie where it's like all is lost and they feel like they want to give up. And then something triggers them to want to propel to get to, we must find them, or whatever that is. That's your third act that brings to the conclusion. So it's knowing that you have those parts. That's how you see a story. And if you don't see it, then you need to go back and work on that to say, what can be compelling enough to make, somebody want to, leave a movie after 20 minutes in the theater and say, can I get my money back and go to something else? And you can do that after the first 20 minutes in case you don't know. But yeah, I need my life back, but yeah, so it's knowing that is how your story should flow. And sometimes if you have a good outline, the story writes itself. And that's really cool. Then you sit there, and you're just telling that story because you know where you're going. So it's an outline to me is everything when you're writing.
And they have a link for that, for your outline. You put your outline in and it tests you and it tells you whether or not you got a story or not.
You're going there for money.
And even going back further, just a little further, when you get that first idea, everybody has that idea, like you're like, oh my God, I'm so excited about this. I can't wait to write this, right? What the outline does, it tests your story. If it falls apart, I'm sorry.
Usually
this is
the
not,
second act.
like, if it falls apart, this is not the story you need to be writing right now. And for me, I have a simple test. I have so many ideas for stories, and I write that I cannot write a log line, which is one sentence explaining what this story is. I am not clear. I don't need to go further. I don't care how in love I am with this. If I can't tell you what it's about in one sentence, it's going to fall apart in the outline. And you'll sometimes you'll be so in love with it that you'll just keep going, and you get to act 2 and it's a whole mess. And now you just have an abandoned screenplay that you never finished. So I start at the very beginning, log line, one sentence, and I choose the story that won't leave me alone. The story that just keeps bothering me. I have other things I need to be doing right now, but this story keeps waking me up. Everywhere I go, I see signs. Okay, I gotta work on this story. And a log line is like boy and girl live next door. They fall in love. One goes off to play and they go off to play basketball. What story is that?
Basketball.
Right. So it's really simple. It's really simple. And there's a whole bunch of stuff that happens afterwards, but you know what the story is. And if you can't crystallize it, because screenplays, you don't have a lot of time or real estate to tell a story. So you have to be extremely clear. So that's what I would give advice. Do the log line first. Then get to the outline and test it. And if it falls apart, start something
Working
else.
on it. Make it work, make it interesting. Like, what would make this story interesting? That's the thing to me. It's like, what is the most, especially in TV, what is the most bizarre thing that could ever happen? It's like, I had one a spec script that I wrote for Frasier, and it was like, when he used to have the old Frasier, so he had a thing, and the guy asked, I wasn't sure about getting married, and Frasier said, run like the wind. So years later, that person who left that person at the altar basically was his tax auditor. And this one was crazy because she had taken everything from the wedding that didn't happen. Like the dress was turned into drapes, and she had all the stuff going on. And he was like, he said, oh yes, run like the wind. So it's just like something you told somebody has come back to haunt you. It was like, this is great. That got me an interview with somebody, one of those people's programs. I ain't get in, that's all right. But
So it's 3 o'clock and we have to wrap up, but I really appreciate you all coming. Thank you so much. 30 seconds each person, anything, last thoughts you want to share, anything, any advice, anything you want to say, everybody, 30 seconds.
30 seconds. Just if you're gonna write, which I'm trying to be more disciplined, but try to pick a time of day and try to stick with it. Even if you're watching a blank screen on the monitor or blank piece of paper, if you're there, just look at that blank page and just write, Mary had a little lamb, and sooner or later something will start to generate.
I would say every story has a beginning, middle, and end. So if you can't come up with the log line, you can't do the outline yet, but you know it has a beginning. You know what happened in the middle, and you know where you want it to end. Work on that.
Your life, your story is your truth, and allow your voice to inspire not just yourself, but other people. Know you have a story that can change someone's life, and allow yourself to write it.
Never mind. I would say tell your stories to each other. I think a lot of times we think that storytelling and writing is just on the page, but it's often talking to each other and sharing each other's stories, because that is how we connect with one another. That's how we get to know each other better. And share it with your grandchildren, share it with your neighbors. We have to keep telling each other stories to each other so that we can stay connected to one another.
And if it is to be, it's up to me. Everybody can organize, put together people, have somebody jump on a camera, even if they don't know how. Start by learning. Just pick up the camera and use your iPhone, write something. You could do just everybody improvise, just to get a feel of getting everybody in their right position and okay, we're gonna shoot this. If you just plot it out on a piece of paper and then shoot one scene at a time and everybody help each other and you'll have a film at the end of that and you'll all laugh and have a really good time and you take care of yourself. You don't do those crazy hours like I do still. So I'm working on it. Yeah. So it's like, just trust your spirit, go with what's, in your heart and share it with somebody else, and if you can't do something, ask somebody else to help you. Everybody wants to help. You just gotta ask.
Hey. Okay, I would just say that I'm so related to you, I think it was, who said those stories that wake you up. It's so true. Don't ignore that. That would be the first thing, because that's something that's very spiritual. And writing can be a very spiritual thing too. I call it being in the zone, because it's and you're creating the world that you want to create, whatever it is. So I would just say briefly that once you do have something with it, because my focus was television, it wasn't film. But anyway, and article writing and essays. Whatever you have, once it's done, I think it's okay to let non-industry people read those things, because you still want to know, how is this person coming across? Does the story make sense? Can you relate to it? What don't you like? Anything, because just briefly, I had created this character and in my mind, she was a really nice person, but the feedback I got, nobody liked her. And I didn't know. And it was painful, but if you have 6 people saying, well, it's very insightful. And I know we're all so super busy, but if you have close friends or relatives, people that you trust, let them read what you've written and take their feedback. I think it would be very helpful.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.